5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Odd Dead Out podcast, where normal is not my specialty. I am your host, as always, the eternally busy Adam Higgins, the Odd Dead Out. And I've got a very special treat for you today. I know I said I was gonna talk turkey today, but you know, when you get a great guest, you get a great guest. So, because I'm the greatest person in the world at intros, here is my extra super special awesome guest, because I'm still congested too, Paul Csomo. Paul Csomo from the Varmints podcast. Take it away, wow. Paul.
I have to live up to what was that extra special super awesome?
Yeah, I think so. I forget what I said.
That's a heck of a thing to build up to live up to.
Yeah. Well, you know.
So is this it? Are we recording right now? Is this the thing?
This is the thing.
Or is it? Oh, okay.
I
didn't know if you were like just testing volume levels or what you were doing. But okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm a schmancy pants, Mr. Fancy Editor guy, and so I do all of that shit in post.
Fair enough.
It's like if I had to worry about levels, I was like, it's like nah. I have ways to do that automatically later, because man, if I had to, when I hear people like, oh, we got to check audio levels, like, can you hear me? All right. There's too many things you can use nowadays that can do it automatically. I'm good. It's all right.
Are there podcasts specifically for podcast editors, people who edit sound?
There's what's it? It's the one with Chris Curran. The crap, I forget what it's called now. Podcast.
Is it good?
To me, I feel like it's mildly false advertising, because they make it out like you're going to learn all of this stuff about editing and post-production, and really it's just like, it's a lot of, you know, it's editors and producers, and like John Buchanan has been on there, and Mike Delgadio has been on there from Booth Junkies, and like basically all of the big time guys, like I can't remember. I don't think SP or Steven and John Drew have been on there, but like Daniel J. Lewis and Dave Jackson and Rob Greenlee and all of the Robs from all of the companies, and all of the you know, top people that are kind of fancy pants producer guys, and they've all been on there.
Sure.
And they all have talked about their methods and like what they use for production, and they do this, and this. And I was like, okay, but I'm not learning anything. It's just the gist of it is them going through their process. I was like, okay, well, I don't have that or that or that or that. And they don't tell you, don't really learn anything. It's just, hey, I use this. And it's like, well, I'm not learning anything from you. And honestly, I find his laugh so obnoxious, I want to punch my phone. And so, and it's just like, dude. But yeah, I just kind of feel like the show, the podcast engineering show. Yeah. And this is, he does the podcast engineering school, which is about like $2,000. No, sorry.
Wow. Yeah, no.
I was like, I'm
also like a podcast engineering podcast sounds like it would be just soul crushingly boring. Like, how many episodes could you do about waveforms or cutting out uhs and ahs and stuff like that? It just doesn't seem that great. But if John's been on it, maybe I'll check that episode out, because I like John.
Yeah, and for the most part, really, it's like, hey, you know, so what is your process? And they break down their process of, okay, well, what are you recording on? How do you record? What equipment do you use? Those kind of things. But like, ultimately, it doesn't, like, if I hear this guy uses this equipment, well, I don't. And the only person that I've heard that records and works in Reaper at all was Mike Delgadio. And actually, Chris Curran actually works in Reaper too. But basically everyone's like, yeah, I record in Reaper and I do this, this, and this, but I've got like $4,000 in plugins and other things that I use too. It's like, well, screw you, man.
Right. Yeah, a lot of those how to podcasts are, the only thing I get from them is like, I'm not sitting there taking notes, you know, like I'm just sort of figuring out what I'm doing right and what I'm maybe not doing right. Like, and the only one I really listen to, by the way, how boring is this? Two podcasters doing shop talk, but no, the only one I really listen to with any regularity is Better Podcasting. I really like that one. And, but most of the time I'm listening to them just trying to figure out what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and try to fix what I'm doing wrong. Even though sometimes what I'm doing wrong is like, I don't really want to fix it. Like, I'm talking on a condenser mic right now, not a Blue Yeti, but it's a condenser mic. And everybody's like, oh, you shouldn't use a condenser mic. And I'm like, yeah, I know what I'm doing with it. Don't
as
worry
long as you
about
know
it.
how to use it, then it's fine. It's just one of those.
Yeah.
They're a little more finicky. You've got to finesse them a little more than a dynamic. You can be a little rougher on a dynamic mic than a condenser, but that's just, the nature of, hey, one piece of equipment versus another. It's like, hey, if you know what you're doing with it, even, if a Blue Yeti is, it's the most promoted, and also when it comes to inside the industry, the most hated microphone out there. It's like, people that are in the space, no, it is not really a good piece of equipment. And it's primarily because it's super touchy. And so you got to know what you're doing. You got to really kind of know how to work it. And there's too many ways to use a Blue Yeti wrong. And so, and so most people end up like, I saw a guy and I don't know how many times you've seen somebody's talking into the top of a Blue Yeti and you're like, that's why you sound bad. And it's like an inside joke with podcasters every time you see someone talking into the top of a Blue Yeti.
Right.
Or we're all that friggin' nitpicky. We'll see somebody using one on TV or something, and you look at the switch to see what mode it's in. We're like,
yeah, exactly.
Like, hey, he's talking into the top and he's got it set on figure 8. What the hell? Because we're dumb.
And it's also become one of those kind of inside jokes where you bring it up in like a Facebook podcast group. You just mention the words Blue Yeti, and people will just almost react violently toward those two words, Blue Yeti. Yeah. Man, people have such strong opinions about it.
Yeah.
It's like dropping a bomb in a group and then leaving, just watching the explosion.
It's sitting on the roof of a pool party and chucking a Snickers into the pool, just watching.
That's exactly it.
It's like you are watching from 10,000 feet and just...
Oh, boy.
If I were more of a troll, I'd do that.
I used one of those. Yeah. I used one of those for the first probably 14, 15 episodes of my podcast, and I didn't have a problem with it. I got it dialed in. I sat there for an afternoon. I took a couple hours. I got it all just right. And I was in a corner of the house where there was bare walls, tile floor, sliding glass door behind me. It was the echoiest room in the whole house. Yeah. And I don't even have carpet anywhere in this house. And I managed to make it work. So then, when people are like, see, the thing that gets me the most is when somebody asks a question about their Blue Yeti, they'll say it's not working properly. Invariably, somebody will chime in with, well, buy another microphone. Yeah. Buy a better microphone.
That gets really annoying.
And that infuriates me. Oh, dude.
It's, hey, how can I fix this problem besides replacing equipment? And it's not even just with the Blue Yeti gets the absolute most hate, but it's not even just with that. Oh. It's anytime you see somebody that says, oh, I've got this, the Snowball is just as bad, but you get like anyone's, oh, I've got this condenser mic. The first thing they say is buy a dynamic, buy this. Like, well, I'm sorry. I just spent all this money. And I will say that your problem, if you bought a Blue Yeti first, was you wasted your money, because realistically you could buy 2 Q2Us or 2100s for the cost of a Blue Yeti. And so that's for me, that's the, no, I'm not going to spend twice as much for that thing, especially if it's getting kind of hated on consistently. So that's one of those, you need to do your research more before you go and buy it. But yeah, that's
in my case, I was using my daughter's Blue Yeti because it was my first podcast. It was my first foray into podcasting, and I didn't know if it was going to take. I didn't know if I was going to like it or not. So I figured I'll just use her microphone until I can buy a microphone of my own, rather than just spend money on all this stuff and not like it and not be able to use it and have to garage sale it,
Yeah, exactly.
And if somebody's like, I'm going to start a podcast, what should I buy? I would never tell them to buy a Blue Yeti, like ever. No. But if somebody says, hey, I'm having a problem with my Blue Yeti, it's echoey and this and that, I'll help them with the Blue Yeti. I'll help them try to sort that problem out. And in the podcast group that I moderate, I've had to tell people, hey, the suggestion to just go out and buy another microphone, A, is not helpful, and B, might not be an option for that person.
Exactly. They just invested money in this.
You might not be. Yeah, you might not be able to go and get a $60, $70. What's the popular one? The AT.
Yeah, the ATR 2100 or the Q2U.
That's the one. Yeah.
So I just spent $150 on a Blue Yeti. I don't have another $70 to spend on a different microphone.
Yeah. Shop Talk with Paul and Adam. Welcome, everybody.
I can, no lie, Derek and I talked shop for about 45 minutes before we pushed record on Sunday.
Yeah.
Because I can do this.
All of what,
I can talk shop all day. I'm bad.
So did you already do your turkey?
I have. Oops. I have alarms for everything, including when to leave the house to go pick up the boys from school, except they don't have school today.
Well, that's good.
Which means they're all out playing video games right now.
Good for them. So how does this work? Are you a day ahead? Like, did you already do the episode where you talked about how you make your turkey?
Nope. I record day of,
okay.
Yeah. I'm just record
day of.
It is literally I record, I run it, do the quick adjusting of noise and everything, line up the music because I have it all in a template, and then export it, run it through Auphonic to make sure it's at level, and then post it. That's it. And that's why these have, so it's like little show notes. It's like, while it's processing in Auphonic, I jump over to Canva and throw together the show art for the day. That's why they're much more simple right now. It's like black background. Okay, here's a picture that goes with, it's like, here's a Bitmoji that'll fit with today's theme, and throw those in there and throw it together real quick and go. And, while that's processing, I make the little picture, because I can't do anything else until the file's done. So then it's like, okay, then drag the file over, type up 2 sentences, cut and paste all of the links into the bottom of the show notes from the previous day's show notes. And there I go. So
that's heroic. Like, at the beginning of the month, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this next year. But as the month has gone on, and as I keep hearing you do these, I'm like, oh, it's going to be tough. I don't know if I want to do it. I think I still want to do it, but but you've been doing.
It's a bit of work, especially like me, because I'm a glutton for punishment, and I do them day of. And typically, I normally do the show day of. I record in the morning time, and through the course of nap time or whatever that the boys are doing, I'm doing writing up show notes and the links and all the rest of that stuff. And it takes more time to do the episode artwork for normal shows, because I'm like, okay, I need a background, and I need to I put more thought into all of the stuff for the normal artwork. But, it's all doing all of those things, but it's all day of. And the time it releases is the time I finished working on it.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm going to do next year too. I'm going to do whatever I do. It's going to be hard mode. It's going to be day of. I don't think I'm going to pre-record anything, because that just seems like cheating
to a degree. Some people have to. People have to write stuff out. Like, I think last year John Buchanan tried to do it, and I started doing it because he literally called me a chicken. He found out about it day of. I think Elsie and Jess from She Podcast were talking about it because I think they were recording that day and they mentioned it. And so he went ahead and relaunched his, I forget what it was called. The Grumpy Podcaster or something like that. I forget what it was called, but he relaunched that show for that. And he didn't make it either, but it was just for him. He has to have everything written out because he doesn't normally work solo. And so he had to have everything formatted and written and basically scripted to do all of his shows. And I think he was doing it on Anchor to test it out. And he was just like, all right, throw it together and put it. But he was like, I have to do so much show prep. I'm like, show prep. But I was like, oh man, I should have. It's like, if I'd have known about this, I'd have tried to do it. He was like, I just found out about it today. Don't be a chicken. I was like, well, shit. So I jumped on, and because I use Spreaker, I've got the Spreaker Studio that you can broadcast live, and then it just drops it in your feed. And so for a lot of them last year, I was doing them live. I think I did the first couple of days where it was pre-recorded, and I was like, well, forget this. I just like loaded the music cues and all that stuff into it and was like, all right, I'm just going to go record live and drop it in there. And that, like, I'm not changing show art. It's like, what's the title? Plug it in, go, and would go live. And that's where, like you were saying way back, that all of the coughing and hacking and all of these sounding like complete crap was from. Granted, I was half dead this time last year, but
and you know what? That was the first episode of the podcast I was listening to of yours. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot listen to this guy. You have 5 lungs and you were coughing up all of them. And I actually unsubscribed. I was like, I can't hear this. And then a couple months later, I came back to it. I was like, oh, this is great.
It's like when I'm not dying, that would sound all right.
Yeah, when you're not dying, it sounds good. I have a lot of admiration for solo podcasters, and I have even more admiration for solo podcasters who do it really well. And I think you do it really well.
Thank you.
Do you have like bullet points? Do you have an outline? How do you just
the only
like,
stuff that I
stream of consciousness, right?
95% stream of consciousness. That is remarkable, because this is just me dumping my brain out. Because I've always got so much stuff running through my head at any given time. And usually if I have an idea for what I want to talk about, it usually doesn't make it to the show because I've forgotten it, or something new has sparked up in my head, or, I break my toe or something like that. Something new happens that affects my brain and my mindset at the time. So like back in the day, I would try and write things down because I was like, well, I need a topic to talk about for the show. And it was always I need a jumping off point. And and now it's, I plan the show that I'm going to feature, and I plan like Jackass of the Week, or if I'm going to do more news, I have those stories pulled up, and I might have the headline. I'll like rewrite the headlines in the show notes, and that's about it. I have those, and I just kind of buzz through them, but it's all, for the most part, just stream of consciousness. It's all just what just popped into my head. It's going to happen. That's just what's going to come out. And so,
yeah, I like I like it when somebody's really grumpy about something, but they can actually manage to be funny while being grumpy. And that's one thing that I kind of would like to do more of on people's podcasts, is just kind of rant and rave a little bit, because I have and maybe you're the same. When I get annoyed or upset about something, I might be serious, but people around me are laughing because of the way I'm wording things or the way I'm describing things. I'm kind of like unintentionally funny, I guess, which is weird to call yourself funny, but I wind up making people laugh with my griping and groaning, being a curmudgeon.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that kind of podcast.
The ability to be humorous while ranting and being crotchety is definitely a talent. And most people don't have it. Most of the time when somebody's being bitchy, they're just being bitchy. And so
right.
It's like, you just sound bitchy. You don't sound pleasant at all.
Yeah.
But if you can make someone laugh while you're sitting there, I was laughing when you pointed out how epic the Army Hammer rant was. I always say that when I push stop on the recording, my brain just goes like Control Alt Delete, and I forget most of what I've said. It all just goes and it's gone because it's just falling out of my head and it's gone. And so that's like my big thing when I listen back to the show later, because I don't listen to the show for a few days just because I was like, I just said all this. I don't want to hear it again. And especially after going through editing or whatever, I was like, I don't want to listen to this again. So I'll listen to it 2 or 3 days later. Sometimes, like for the regular weekly shows, I usually don't get them to the weekend. And then it's like, if I'm still laughing at something I said, then I did this right. And when I listen, it's like, if I can still make myself laugh for whatever. And when I listened back to that rant, I was like, oh my God, I skewered him so hard. This was the most epic rant. Like, I think this beat Logan Paul. I mean,
it was one for the ages. Did you ever find out if he blocked you or not?
I don't think so.
Did he block you? No, he blocked me. I thought for sure he'd get you too.
I don't know. Like I said, I don't tag. I probably would get more of an audience if I would tag celebrities whenever I would shit on them, but that I'd probably be blocked by a bunch of celebrities. Then again, so it's like you don't care about me, so what's it matter? It's like I'm not regularly ripping on you. It was just you did something dumb this week, and you deserve to be shit on for something dumb this week. Sorry.
Oh, Army Hammer, what a dick!
I was like the day that I posted up, and it was like, oh yeah, he like finally apologized and realized how much of a dick he was being. Like, and then introduced Bill Maher. I was like, oh. Woo. Like, nah, I've already ripped one person apart over Stan Lee. I'd feel like it was just low hanging fruit at this point. Granted, Bill Maher is kind of low hanging fruit for so much stuff. It's like, I'm sorry.
How happy was Army Hammer when Bill Maher showed up?
I know.
And his mouth.
And everyone stopped caring.
Holy cow!
Like, oh fuck, Army Hammer. Bill Maher just like, oh man, people aren't getting. It's like nobody could hate anybody more than they hate Army Hammer right now over Stan Lee, and it's like. Bill Maher just walks up, hold my beer. Because
yeah, exactly. Army Hammer must have like put a whole bunch of money in Bill Maher's PayPal or Patreon or something. That is fantastic.
I was like, dude, they're still talking about it. I still see it pop up. I was like, yeah, because he was
he deserves to be talked about.
Douche. And it was not like, Army Hammer was just being kind of a dick and saying, yeah, man, you guys are being kind of selfish. But Bill Maher just flat out shit on anybody who's ever read a comic book ever. And dude, you have no clue what you're talking about. And you're just being disrespectful to such a large population of people.
Yeah. And everything about Bill Maher. And it was just the tone of like, it was the overall blanket statement of, if you read comic books, you are dumb.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a guy, his name is Adam Morris, and he actually joined us on an episode. It was the Polar Bears episode.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And he's a marine biologist. He has a PhD, smart guy. And he has forgotten more about comic books than I'll ever know.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
like
bad.
He's the biggest comic book nerd of all. And I tweeted him. I was like, hey, Bill Maher thinks you're a freaking idiot.
Yeah, just pointing that
out. Bill Maher.
I was like, I'm sorry. People got to stop calling him a comedian. He's not a comedian.
He hasn't been in a long time.
Snarky political pundit at this point.
He is.
Like, dude's, politically incorrect started as supposed to be a comedy show about politics, and now it's just a politics show. And it's like, nah, sorry,
Well, it winds up being about him being pedantic and just demeaning and condescending.
Yeah.
These people who like comic books. Let me tell you about comic books.
Yeah, like
it's like
Dennis Miller could do that and be funny and not be like degrading to people. That's what I like. That's why I like Dennis Miller over Bill Maher, because he could go out, and he would use the big fancy talking words and whatnot, but that was part of the shtick. It was, he's going to use big fancy words, and you may or may not get the joke, but either way, it was funny.
Yeah. There's a difference between crapping on something and making you feel like you're in on the joke, and crapping on something and making you feel like you're an idiot for liking it.
Exactly.
Kind of like what you were talking about. Well, I don't want to you were talking about another podcaster the other day who really kind of like, if you enjoy something and he doesn't, he will let you know how much he doesn't enjoy that thing.
And just be really, it's sometimes your dislike of something can be border on disrespectful. And I don't like that. That bugs me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just, you like what you like. You don't like what you don't like. Look, it's a tough world out there. Everybody's got to have something to make him happy. Just let him be happy.
Yeah, exactly. I like some dumb things. I straight up,
so do I.
I get enjoyment out of some things that, you could call them guilty pleasures. I straight up, it's like 2 weeks ago on Pre-Recorded Live, they mentioned Hanson. To which point, and I actually am the editor for that show. And so I hear them talk about Hanson, and I end up sending them a video. It was like a more recent video from one of their more recent albums. And in the music video for this song, and it's super catchy. I love this song. It's got like James Van Der Beek and I'm trying to remember she was the chick from Tron, and she was on House, and I'm blanking her name. Olivia Wilde. And
Olivia Wilde,
all these celebrities, they were basically like kids were kids when Hanson first came around, but now they're all in a Hanson music video. And the song's called Get the Girl Back. Cool. And I love that song. It's super Jackson 5-y. And like, I sent them the video to this song, and they just like, they could feel them eye rolling at me all the way from Ohio. And I love this song.
It's okay though. Look, some people like Nickelback. It's okay. It's okay.
Why you gotta hate on Nickelback?
See, that's what I'm talking about. Hey, if they make you happy, Adam, you listen to Nickelback. You listen to them the whole live long day.
Hell, that was part of it. I think that was in a news segment in one episode.
Was it?
Because there was this whole thing in the military hating on Nickelback, and I think there was a particular base where they flat banned Nickelback. It was bad. Oh, shit. I'm like, wow, man, that's really harsh.
That is pretty harsh. That is great. So
it's everybody loves different things, and you can be happy and and all of that fun jazz. You don't have to hate on someone else's happy.
No, and there's things I don't get, like Nickelback. There's things that I've tried to watch and enjoy, and look, they make people happy, and they don't land on me, so I make fun of them a little bit, but I'm not going to sit there and make somebody feel stupid for, like the Henry Potter thing. Like, that's what, I don't know anything about Henry Potter. What is that? Henry Potter? Harry Potter? I don't know. What is there? Is there zombies
Direct
in that?
all hate mail to Paul Csomo at IDon'tKnowWhat.com.
Henry Potter and the world of wizardry. I don't know what it's all about. It's kids waving wands at each other, and I think there's a zombie in it, or at least there's a guy that looks like Odo from Deep Space Nine. I don't get it. I don't understand it.
I never thought about that.
But if you like it, if you like it, and it's helping your kids read, it's fine. It's fine. I don't know. Is there hobbits in Harry Potter? Is there zombies? I don't know. It's not my cup of tea. There could be anything. I think the person that wrote Harry Potter probably he or she, I don't know who wrote it. Maybe they just took a handful of darts into a comic book store and just kind of threw them around and made a story out of it. I don't know.
That could be it. Her story is so crazy epic, and now she's like one of the richest women in the world. And
she was practically homeless.
She was like practically homeless and all this, and then she wrote a book about a wizard, and next thing you know, she's sitting there like bumping with Oprah on the Forbes list.
Here's the thing about Henry Potter. Like, in the first movie, he's going to the wizardry school. I don't know where Odo pops up at. But can't they just like make a potion or cast a spell and kill that guy and like wipe out like 4 books and 3 movies?
I was listening to...
That's what I don't understand
there
about
was
it.
Actually, Sans Pants Radio does a show called Plumbing the Death Star where they kind of ask rhetorical questions about whatever. And they did an entire series trying to dissect what if Harry Potter didn't exist. And it was how would these books play out and the events of the story play out if Harry himself wasn't involved? And it was like, it's like, yeah, for the most part, well, this won't happen, this wouldn't happen. And for the most part, most of the bad things that happen are a direct result of his interactions and his presence in the storyline. And it's like, yeah, well, this wouldn't have none of this would have happened if Harry wasn't around. Granted, at the same time, if you take it back far enough, the entire world would have been conquered by evil wizards because this kid didn't blow up this evil wizard way back when he was a baby. But, it's how far do you want to look at it? But it's like, well, this would have happened. And, he's not really that great. He's kind of a jerk and he's, things like, but it was like, yeah, when you look at it and when I tried to explain this to my wife because she's a crazy Potterhead and she just, anytime I talk about anything Harry Potter, she just blows up on me because I've never read the books. I've only ever seen the movies. And so she gets really mad at me about my gaps in knowledge, even though sometimes because I read the wiki because I'm not about to read the 50,000 pages that make up the series and then all of the additional material. Right. So I don't know all of the details, but there are things that I know because I read the wiki about this thing because wiki rabbit holes. Like, what's the deal with this thing? Clicky, clicky, clicky. Next thing you know, 2 hours into Wikipedia, you know everything there is to know about Draco Malfoy. And
yeah, so exactly. But just through exposure to the internet, you wind up finding stuff out. Like I know in the Henry Porter books that the guy who looks like Rupert from Survivor dies eventually. I don't know his name. I just know he dies. And then some idiot went into the line at the bookstore a few years ago and just spoiled it for everybody.
Oh yeah.
What's his name? Oh yeah.
Okay. I was thinking there was the Snape kills Dumbledore. Yeah. I think that was it.
Dumbledore.
Yeah.
There you go. Is Snape the guy? Is he the guy that looks like Odo?
No, he's Alan Rickman. The guy who looks like Odo is Voldemort. He's the big bad guy who's because he's there's the whole snake thing, so he's got a snake face. Which
snake. Okay,
I was and it was always the weirdest thing for me when I was like, man, that's a lot of prosthetics. And then I found out, oh no, his entire face is CGI. He's just got dots, and so it's really weird when you see the no visual effects version of that because he's actually, it's one of those, I'm trying to remember, I think it's Ralph Fiennes. I could have the wrong Fiennes, but he's got a huge nose and we're like, there's no amount of prosthetics we're going to stick on this dude's face to cover up his nose and make him look like a snake. And I was like, oh yeah, boy, absolutely. It's one of those, you see him and you forget what he looks like without the makeup, and then you see him and you're like, oh yeah, there's no way they'd have done that with makeup. But it's he's going to look like a giraffe.
Some guy did. I can relate. I got a pretty big beak on my face too.
I do too, but I have an oversized head, so it kind of balances out.
Somebody did that to me a while back too. They kind of ruined one of my favorite movie of all time. The favorite movie of mine of all time is Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so I know this on story. Facebook. You know where it's going, right? So I'm on Facebook and I'm talking about how Raiders of the Lost Ark is basically a perfect movie. There's very, very little that you can find fault with in the movie. And so this guy, he chimes in and he goes, he could have just let the Nazis have the Ark and it would have been all over with.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? F you.
I remember they did an entire episode of the Big Bang Theory devoted to that whole thing. And they
is that where he got that from?
Probably.
The Big Bang Theory?
They did an entire episode of Big Bang where they did that, where Amy comes in and all the guys are like, oh, you need to watch this. It's our favorite movie. It's the greatest movie of all time. And then she sits and watches it and she's like, but in the end, the Nazis got the box and they opened it and their faces all melted. So if he did nothing, then they would have opened the box and all died and nothing would have changed. I was like, I was like, yeah, huh? And then like through the whole episode, it's everybody rewatching the movie and coming to and they're like, well, but then he had to, no. And they're like, it was just everybody coming through the damn it, she's right realization that ultimately it doesn't matter.
See, he didn't say he got that from the Big Bang Theory. He just kind of presented it as his own humor. He said nothing about, and by the way, the Big Bang Theory, oh boy, that's another one. That's another one. If you like it, God bless you. You watch it all day long, but I'm telling you, nobody who is like, are they supposed to be physicists? Are they scientists?
Yeah,
I don't know what they do.
3 of them are physicists and one's an engineer.
Sure. So nobody that smart or that busy has the time to watch Doctor Who and Star Trek and Star Wars and Game of Thrones and Harry Potter and play all the tabletop games and Dungeons and Dragons. And nobody has time for all that. You're not going to get all the pop culture in, and you're not, and it's just the most
like you're a research physicist for a university.
Yeah. And they have all the time to just consume all of the pop culture, like all of it.
Yeah. It's like, it's mildly over. Hey. Like, no, there's still the whole, you probably were into it when you were a kid, but the current stuff, like, you're not going to be able to be current on stuff like that. You don't have time to be current. I don't have time to be current. Then again, I don't care about most of it. Look, I like what I like, and people like what they like, and if Big Bang Theory helps them get them through the day, and it makes them happy, and it makes them just want to wake up in the morning so that they can live another week to get the next episode of Big Bang Theory, man, you just go ahead and do that. That's fine. I don't get it, but it's fine. It's like, I haven't watched it I don't think I've watched it since probably around 5th or 6th season. I was right around the time where they introduced all the girls, and so now there's suddenly everybody is hooked up with somebody else is about when we stopped watching it. And it was more of a case of we got rid of cable at the time. I was like, we don't have TV.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched one episode. I was in the hospital with a family member, and it was on the TV, and she's like, I love this show. I love this show. So I sat there and watched an episode with her. And I'm thinking to myself, if I'm in a hospital watching this, I'm going to be actively getting worse. Like, this is what hospitals use to keep you in the hospital longer.
It might be the green. I'm going with the green Jello, but that too. Like, why can't I change it from TBS? Why isn't TBS showing anything else? Just turn on A&E. I think A&E is still the Law and Order 24 hours a day channel. I'm not sure. It was when I was in the hospital. A&E is like Breaking Bad and Walking Dead now.
Oh, okay. The Walking Dead, another one. Enough with the zombies. See, this is why I love this podcast. I can just not talk about animals and just gripe about bad
exactly.
entertainment.
I can talk about whatever the hell I want to here, and it kind of goes into the whole tagline: "Normal is not my specialty. I don't do anything right." I talk about whatever the hell is in my head, and you get to come on here and talk about whatever the hell is in your head, because we went from microphone nitpickiness to shitting on the Big Bang Theory. Welcome to my show. That's just what happens. But there is one thing that I do actually plan for the show that you get to do now.
Yes, we're wrapping it up.
Because, this short show is turning into a full one. So what? I don't care. Tomorrow's show just became today's. Congratulations. Now I get to record tomorrow.
You can do, hey, you know what? You can do a part 1 and a part 2.
Nah, that'll require editing.
Okay.
Like, I got birthday dinner to make because it's Bug turned 5 today. So, Buggy. It is Buggy's birthday, so he is turning 5, and he wants pancakes for dinner. So I get to go make a mess of pancakes.
I like the way Buggy thinks.
But
cool.
Anyway,
all right,
you get to pick your podcast recommendation for this week or today, because lots of them this week. Why not?
Okay. So I had a very difficult time picking one because I listen to a whole lot of podcasts. So I'm going to give you two answers. The first answer is you can go to Varmints Podcast, or I'm sorry, at Varmints Podcast on Twitter, and you can look at my daily listening logs, and you can just pick anyone you want. They're all good.
Yes, very much so.
But if I had to settle on one, boy, okay, I just have to pick one from today that I enjoyed a whole lot, and I think I would have to go with Weird With You. Weird With You is Justine and Santiago. They are a couple who sit down and talk about random stuff, which is normally a really horrible format for a podcast, but they are actually very weird and very funny. The show is normally 45 minutes or less, which is right in my wheelhouse because I grew up in the 80s, so I have ADD by default.
Yes.
And it's just a super entertaining little kind of improv, talk about anything, and it goes in all sorts of weird directions show. Weird With You.
Well, thanks a lot. You just stole one of mine for later.
Sorry.
I had them set up for anywhere coming up probably in December once I was through all of this craziness here in November. But yeah, I just recently started listening to them, and it's one of those I'd heard of that show through More Gooder Than, because they are because Santiago and his voices and all of that. And they use his Christopher Walken on their goodie bag episodes and things like that.
Yeah.
And like, I need to listen to this show. Like they're very popular. They're well known among the podcasting circles that I travel in. And so I started listening to them.
Yeah, no, it's a tremendous show.
So funny. And
yeah, they're great.
It's funny because I started listening to them after I started listening at 1.5 speed. So I've never actually listened to their music at regular. Like, I have no clue. Like, all I know is that at 1.5 speed, that's some thumping funk music right there. Like that is one funky beat at
great.
1.5 speed.
What are the odds with 500 million thousand podcasts out there? We would both kind of land on the same one, but that's good. It's a good show.
Considering I especially for basically this entire month, I've seen almost your entire podcast listening schedule. I get to pop up every day.
That's awesome.
So I get to see everything you listen
every day for this month.
I get to see everything you're listening to.
That's right. Hey, I told you I'm with you for the long haul. I'm listening to every single episode. I mean, when I get back to work on Monday, I'm probably going to listen to 5 episodes in a row. But yeah, no, I'm with you.
You are a glutton for punishment, sir.
Nah, I'm just crazy.
Yeah, you're crazy enough to volunteer to be on this show. So then again, Derek reminded me.
So. This is a lot of fun. Yeah, no, this is a hoot.
But okay, and it's one of those where I've said I wanted to do guests, and you were one of the first people to jump on. It's like, hey, you want to guest? I'll be on here. And it's for me, it's just hard to schedule stuff. And it worked out today because no kids in school. So normally I would be sitting in the car line right now. Like, yep, I wouldn't be home for another 30 minutes right now. So
yeah, no, I'm glad you had me on. I'm always nervous when I ask people, like when people put out a call, hey, I need a guest. And I'm like, well, if you run out of ideas, you can call me. It's like that imposter syndrome that I have. Like, oh, I don't know. Maybe they want me to talk. Maybe they don't. It's okay. I don't know if I'm qualified.
That's why I don't do guest spots. I only ever get invited to talk about podcasting. Or, I was on Second Press because of my BS from the news, because that was their entire show. And I was on Play Comics primarily because I just liked a lot of Chris's posts, and it turned into like, well, man, you really like my stuff. You want to come on and talk video games? And so I did, stuff like that.
Yeah, that was a good episode. Yeah, that was a really good episode.
And so it's been really like I said with Derek, I'm so into so many things, and I can talk about so many things, which is why I can't keep to just having a plain old subject here. But our entire conversation is a demonstration that neither of us can just talk about one thing. But it's funny because like I could be on so many shows. Like, I would love to go on the countdown with Paul and Wayne. That would be so awesome. But I feel like I'm bowing, I'm just like in awe of getting to talk to you. And yeah,
Me?
You're you're somebody, in my circle, in my brain, you're somebody. I'm just some schnook.
I am not.
But
I am not. I am an idiot with a microphone.
Yeah, me too.
Well, there we go. That we're in the same boat. I think we have a lot more in common than we both think. I think we have a lot in common.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In the time I've known you, absolutely. But I guess it's time we got to wrap things up because, man, like I said, I got a mess of pancakes to make. So thank you so much, Paul, for coming on the show. You are awesome. And remember, you guys, you can catch Paul and his co-host Donna over on the Varmints podcast at blazingcariboustudios.com/varmints. And you absolutely do need to be following Varmints podcast on all of the social medias because if you just want to see cool animal stuff, that's a great place. And so many silly animal memes and GIFs and all of those fun things. So check them out. But that is it for me for today. Tomorrow, I will be back. I will be talking turkey. I'll probably be up in the morning pretty early getting this one out here on Thanksgiving because, Thanksgiving Day has got to be a busy, busy day. So I will be back tomorrow to talk turkey. But until then, thank you, Paul. Thank you, anybody out there listening. And until tomorrow, thank you and good night.